Okay, B'ezrat Hashem, we are continuing in Masechet Chagiga. We're on Daf Chaf Hey Amud Bet. We're in the English, in the art scroll on 25B-4. We're in the Mishnah, the new Mishnah. Now, the art scroll will try to present the Mishnah like Rashi, which is very similar to the Rambam, but we'll try to do the Mishnah like the Rambam, because that's the Halacha L'Maaseh. So we're going to learn it that way. So let's start the Mishnah. So what are we talking about in this Mishnah? So we're continuing in a list of things where we're more machmer, we're more strict with teruma, with truma, versus kochim, versus karbanot. Um, so in this Mishnah, we're going to be dealing with the kalim, the vessels, the pots, the pans that are used for kochim, for karbanot, and pots and pans that are used for teruma, for truma. Now, there is an issue of earthenware kalim, kli cheres. We know that if they become tamei, there's really no way to be mitahar them. There's no way to make them tar. Also, pay attention. The Torah tells us that every time that we have a kli cheres that we use for the korbanot, after the time of eating the korban is over, you have to break the kli cheres. Why? Because we know when you have notar, which is noiser, which is leftovers of the korban, you have to burn them. You can't eat them. The leftovers become aser, and it goes into the kli cheres. And remember, the earthenware keli, you can't take out the blios, you can't take out the absorptions of the tastes. So the only way to get rid of it, you have to break the kli cheres. You have to break this earthenware vessel. As such, there was a need to always get new kli cheres, new vessels, new earthenware vessels, when coming with the korban, because you have to do the avoda in kli cheres, and you would have to get new ones because the old ones were already broken. So there is one more din that we should bring to attention, is that there was a halacha, and that was the way it was nahi. That's where they were conducting themselves. That they did not make pottery, they did not make earthenware kalim, they did not make them in Yerushalayim proper, in Jerusalem. And the reason for that was not to have a kiln that makes earthenware vessels in Jerusalem was because of the process of making these kalim required high heats, right? In the kiln, you had very high heats, which led to black smoke and black ashes, which would then, if it was situated in Jerusalem, would then be, released in Jerusalem and would make the walls of the city, walls of the houses, the walls of it would reduce the beauty of Yerushalayim. And as such, it was usher to make pots and pans of earthenware kalim and any type of earthenware kalim in Jerusalem. Now, the Amoritz and most of the pottery sellers, even if there were a few chaverim, few religious people who sold them, there was no way they can keep up with the demand that was needed for korbanot. So now we needed a way to have enough kli cheres. You can't make them in Jerusalem, so you have to buy it outside Jerusalem. Do you want to buy it from way outside or closer? We're going to see the Mishnah wants us to buy it from closer because the people, for some reason, the Amaratzim, who lived closer to Jerusalem, they had a little bit more respect for the korbanot. They knew what it was for, and they had respect for it, and therefore they were a little bit more careful. And the fact that we needed it, because we couldn't do a korban without it, and you can't wait for later. It's not like Truma you can eat anytime later. You would have to eat it at that certain time. So the Chachamim were lenient with the rabbinical tumah that they put on the Amoritz. They took it away so they can bring korbanot in this kli cheres. They can buy from them the kli cheres and use it from a certain point and onwards. So this is where our Mishnah picks up. So I gave you a lot of outside ideas, which are important to understand the Gemara and the Mishnah that we're going to endeavor on. Okay, so we're on the Mishnah. Min Modeim velifnim. From the city of Modeim and Lifnim, and inwards. So not inside the city, but from right outside the city and inwards towards Jerusalem, which is 15 mil, right? Not a mile, but a mil, a little more than a mile, a little bit more than 15 miles, right? And this was a very important number for another halacha. Remember, we said that if a person was bederech rechoka, he was far away from the Mikdash, he gets to bring the Pesach Sheni. He misses Pesach Rishon. So bederech rechoka means he's 15 mil away from the city of Modi'im. So it's an important number. So here the Mishnah says, min Modi'im lifnim, from the city of Modi'im and inwards, ne'emanina klicheres, you can believe the Amaretz to say that his klicheres is tahar. Min ha-Modi'im v'lachotz, but from outside the city and outwards, and ne'emanin. We don't believe the Amaretz. They're not so close to Jerusalem. They're not so worried about korbanot. They're not careful. Therefore, we cannot believe them. Now, when it says min Modi'im to Jerusalem, is it only from that city? Or is it any comparable city that's 15 mil from Jerusalem would also have the same din? So some Mifarshim say that no, it's only the city of Modi'im. Some say no. Some say anything that's 15 mil. And some say no, practically speaking, it was only Modi'im because Modi'im had the best earth to make earthenware kalim. They had the industry there. And the other cities didn't have the industry. Therefore, the Mishnah is practical in telling us from this city where they actually sold it, that's where it was. Now, Ketzad, how did it work? Hakadar shu mocher hakederot nichlas lifnim min hamudim. Hu hakadar v'hen hakederot v'hen loktein ne'eman. If the Amaretz is leaving Modi'im and he's going towards Jerusalem, and the lokeach, the guy who's buying it, saw him coming out of Modi'im with his pots, with his pans, and you're buying it from him, exactly him, not from someone else that he's selling it to, but from him himself, Ne'eman, then you can believe him. Yatsa, Eno Ne'eman, but if he's leaving Modi'im going outwards, right? He's not going to be Eno Ne'eman. Then he's not going to be believed. Okay? We'll read the Rambam on this part. Although the sages deemed credible Ameh Haaretz with regard to purity of earthenware vessels from Modi'im inward, they are not deemed credible outside the area, even with regard to the identical pot or the same pots and the same customers. So if he's inwards, you can buy from him. Same guy, same everything. He went the other way, and you see him there, you cannot buy it. That's the way Chachamim set up the din. So now, the question the Gemara is starting off with is, you told me from outside the city of Modi'im inward to Jerusalem is, you didn't believe them. From outside the city of Modi'im the other way, we don't believe them. What about Modi'im itself, the city itself? What's the halacha there? So says the Gemara, Modi'im, Pa'amim kilifnim, Pa'amim kilachutz. Sometimes it's considered as if it's inwards, and it's going to be considered tahor. And sometimes the city is going to be considered outwards and going to be considered tameh. You're not going to believe the Amaretz. Ketzad, what's the case? How is it can be one way or the other? Kadar yotze v'haver nichnas kilifnim. Okay? The haver is going in, and the kader is coming out, so then it's being considered as if it's inside. Okay? So what's it called? The haver is going into the perimeter, into the permitted perimeter, and the kadar is outside the permitted perimeter. He's in the city of Modi'im. Okay, so here we go. So here is the city of Modi'im. It's in the middle. And the haver is going out towards the permitted area. But he's still in the city. And here he can buy. Here he can buy because he's going out. He's going to the permitted place. And so here's the potter right now. You can take it from him. But if both of them are going into the permitted area, or both of them are leaving the permitted area, then it's kalachutz. Then you cannot buy it. Because if you're both going into the right place, then wait till you get to the right place and buy it. and if both of you are going out of the permitted place, then you cannot buy it there. Get back into the permitted place and then buy it. Okay? Let's take a look at the Rambam. Let's see, make sure we learn this Gemara the correct way. Again, there are other ways to explain this Gemara, but we're learning it lahalacha like the Rambam. From Modaim and inward, a potter is deemed credible with regard to the purity of the earthenware vessels. But from Modaim outward, he's not deemed credible. As for Modaim itself, there we go. It is sometimes considered outside and sometimes considered inside. If the seller and the buyer are both entering the permitted area or leaving, it's considered outside. If the Haver is entering and the Amaretz is leaving, it is considered inside. Okay, so the Amaretz is leaving the city, and so he's going into the permitted area, and the Haver is entering, right? The Haver is entering, Amaretz is leaving. So the Amaretz is leaving from the permitted area into the city, and the Haver is leaving the city, entering the permitted area. The Haver can buy it in that place in the city, and it's considered inside. Okay, so that is how the Rambam explains this case. Amar Abaye, so says Abaye, Afanan nami tanina. We also learn like this. Why? Hakadar shemacharat hakederot. The guy who sells the kederot, v'nichnas lifnim min hamodeim, and he comes in from modeim, we believe him. Tama, what? The lifnim min hamodeim, because he's inside the permitted area, outside the city, inside the permitted area. Ha modeim gufa la meheman. So, meaning the city itself, we don't believe. Ema seva, but the seva says yatsa if he's leaving the city to outwards and uneman. Ha modeim gufa. So if he's in modeim itself, ne'eman, only outwards from the city, we don't believe him. This is where the kadar is leaving the permitted area into the city, and the haver is entering into the permitted area, and they're both in the city right now. He can buy it from him. He can buy it. If they're both entering the permitted area, both exiting the permitted area, they cannot buy from them. It's going to be considered outside. So it depends on the way that they are going. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Tana. Storan Tosefta. Ne'emanin b'chlicheres hadakin la kodesh. We trust the Amaretz for small vessels. We don't trust him on big vessels. What's considered a small vessel? He can hold it in one hand. No, even if you don't hold it in one hand, it still can be considered small. Lahalacha is a machloket, the Rambam and the Rabbi. The Rambam says the same way you believe him for the small, you can believe him for the big. Well, exactly. Maybe the Rambam didn't have this line of Rish Lakish and Yochanan, or maybe he reads Rav Yochanan meaning even if it is large, it doesn't have to be small. Maybe that's the way the Rambam understands it. The Ravad says no. The conclusion of the Gemara seems to say that only small earthenware vessels are trustworthy from the Amaretz. And what would be the difference? Why would it make a difference? Why the Gemara or the Ravad make a difference? It's because in order for the carbon to have the carbon, all you need is a small vessel. You don't need the large ones for storage. So therefore, if there's no need to believe him, we wouldn't believe him. We only learn if the pot or pan, whatever we want to get from him, is empty. But if it's full, we cannot take it from him. Yochanan says, even if it's full, we can still take it from him. Even if his apikasato is in there, it comes from the Greek, says Rav Steinsaltz. The word apikasion was a type of striped garment, so it means a beged. And we know, Chamim say, the beged of Amaretz has tumah, and the beged is inside the pot. Still, says Rav Yochanan, you can still buy the pot from him. Rav Yochanan says, listen, what's inside might actually be tameh, right? But the pot itself is tahor. And don't be, what can it be? One inside and one outside, one is tameh, what's tahor? If it's inside, the whole thing is already Share lagin male mashkin, lagin temein, tumat shiva, umashkin tehorin. We had already a case where one was the opposite of the other, right? We instead of Hillel took the shita of Beit Shammai when there was a corpse tuma on the first floor, and the second floor there was a hatch and it was open, but they closed it with an earthenware vessel. And really, the kelim upstairs now are going to become remain tahor. But Shammai said no. Listen, Amaretz is still tameh, so you tell him to be tovel his kelim, and those are tameh, and the food is tahor. Why? Because he's not going to listen to you until your food is tameh. So therefore, you see a case where you can have the food tahor and the keli tameh. So too here, you can have the keli tahor and the inside tameh, and that's the way the Chamim put the halacha. Says the Rambam. All people are deemed credible. We have them in a minute. Although the liquid it contains are considered impure, every person is nevertheless deemed credible with regard to the vessel itself, even if one's garment, which is considered impure with regard to korbanot, is inside the keli remains pure for korbanot in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so that's the way the Rambam brings down the halacha. Let's take a look at the next Mishnah. We have the next Mishnah. Hagabain, or Hagabain shenichasu letoch habayit. All right. So these Gabain is not your Gabain your shul. This is the guy who is an Amaretz, who is a tax collector. Tax collectors were notoriously bad people. And if you couldn't pay up the tax, they would come into your house and take a collateral, so that you would end up paying up. So here, this Gabain shenichasu letoch habayit. If the Amaretz tax collector went into the house, or the ganav, the thief, comes in, steals your stuff, and then comes back the next day to return it. And they tell you, lo naga'u, nemanim lomar, lo naga'u. They say, we didn't touch it, we didn't make it tameh. Mishnah says we can believe them. In Yerushalayim, nemanin ala kodesh, in Jerusalem, they're all believed for kodesh. We'll see what this means. And during the time of the holiday, we even believe the Amaretz that they're tahor at that time as well, during the holiday time. Okay. First, we have to deal with. You told me that the tax collector or the ganav comes in, we believe him. Gemara says, or minhu, or minhi. Contrast. There's a Mishnah in Tahorot that said, Hagabain, shenichasu letoch habayit, habayit kulo tameh. If the tax collector goes inside, the whole house becomes tameh. So how can this one say it's not? You believe him. The Gemara says, lo kasha, it's not a question. Ha, the ikar, nochi b'hadayu, ha, the leka nochi b'hadayu. This depends. Here there was a guy there, and there was no guy there. It's not, because we have if yesh goy imahen, if there was a goy with them. Hold on 1 second. Which something. Im yesh nochi imahen nemanin lomar lo nichnasu. You can believe them to say they didn't enter. But you cannot believe to say they entered, but they didn't touch. Okay? So, which way? So, Rashi seems to understand, and others seem to understand as well, that if the guy's there, then you can't believe him. Everything is tameh. That's what it means. Mishnah says everything is tameh. It's talking about when the guy's there. Our Mishnah says that it's tahor. We can believe that's when there was no guy there, right? That's what it seemingly means. And if there is a guy there, what of it? What difference does it make? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan have a different opinion. And they're scared of the Nachri. They don't do a good job and go around everywhere and touch everything. He's going to beat them up. So therefore they're worried. No, they're not worried about the Nachri himself, but they're worried that he's going to go and tell the king. Maybe no. Let's say it's not a Nachri that can beat them up. So according to the first opinion, that it's only because he's scared they're going to beat him up. He can't beat him up, so therefore you can believe them. They didn't touch anything because they're not worried about him. But if you're worried about them telling the king, they'll still be worried, and they would have touched everything, and you cannot believe them at that point. And that seems to be the way Rashi seems to learn. However, Lalacha, the Rambam had a different girsa. The Rambam has the girsa flip. Listen to the Rambam, and let's see if we can figure it out. The Rambam writes, a government tax collectors entered a house in order to confiscate a vessel as pledges. All the contents of the house are considered impure. So if Jewish tax collectors, let's go inside, everything becomes tameh. If they were accompanied by a guy, then you can believe them if they say they did not touch a certain object because they are afraid of the guy. The Rambam had a flip girsa. The Rambam saying if the guy is there, then we believe them to say they didn't touch something. The guy's not there, then we don't believe them to say. Okay? What would be the rationale, possible rationale, is that perhaps when the guy is there, they're not. Listen, if you're gonna go get a collateral, right? You're not potchkening around the kitchen with pots and pans. You're going to find the jewelry box, right? You're trying to find something of value. So therefore, if the guy's there, they're going to do a proper search. Perhaps this is the way to understand the Rambam. I didn't see this inside, but this was a thought that we had. That perhaps they're going to do a proper search and not go through the pots and pans. But when there's no guy watching over them, they're merely making the scrambled eggs. They're using the kitchen. They're making themselves at home for a while. So therefore you cannot believe them, and that's the way Lalacha, the Rambam brings this down. Okay, just finished reading the Rambam. This applies only if the witness saw them enter, or if the pledge was in their possession. But if it's otherwise unknown that they actually enter the house, then you can still believe them if they say we went in but did not touch the vessel. Okay, so that is on the tax collector guy and no guy. So again, the Rambam says no guy, we can't believe them. Guy, yeah, we can believe. Now, the next case was Chena Ganovim Shechzira da Kalim. If you have a thief who returned the Kali, or Minhi, in contrast to another Mishnah in Taharot, the Mishnah says, anyway, anywhere the thieves went into the house, everything becomes tamei in that area. So how could it be? Our Mishnah said they came to return it. We believe them. So and this Mishnah that we're talking about, we believe them, is when they're doing tshuva. They're returning it. A regular thief doesn't return stuff, right? So if he's returning it, he is about tshuva. And if he's about tshuva, then he's starting the right way, and he's not going to lie. He's going to say the right thing. If he says he didn't touch it, you can believe him. Shema amina. Okay. Then we said, in Jerusalem, people are incredible with regard to sacrificial food. Oh, wait. Just let's read the Rambam for a minute in the previous piece. Thieves or government tax collectors who repented, so thief or the government tax collector, or also thieves, and restored the property they took of their own accord without any coercion, are deemed credible if they say they did not touch the vessel of the house, even concerning those parts of the house they had entered. We can believe them if they're doing tshuva. Okay. All right. Now, in Jerusalem, Ne'emanim el Kodesh, says the Rambam, all people are deemed credible in Jerusalem at all times to say that an earthenware vessel is pure for sacrificial use, whether it's large, whether it's small, whether it's full, or whether it's empty. In Jerusalem, we believe them on everything. Now, Tana, it was taught in a writer, Ne'emanin al kli hares gasin la Kodesh. We even believe in Jerusalem for large. They're called kach lama. Why is this? We did not make kilns in Jerusalem in order to preserve the quality of the air in the city and the beauty of the city. Therefore, when in Jerusalem you needed a big pot, right? So the Mikdash, when we need a big house, they have storage and stuff like that. In Jerusalem, you can get it. Again, seemingly from this Gemara, that before is only small, like the Ravan. right? In Modaim inwards, it's only small. In Jerusalem, seems to be the big ones. All right, seems to be that's the way to understand it. All right, next, uvishat haregal af teruma, and during the regal, during the holiday, we say that the Amaret is also believed on teruma. He's believed on everything during the regal, during the holiday, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot. We believe that they're all tahor. Again, they're coming up to the Mikdash. They feel it in the air. They are more careful during that time. How do we know this? Where are you getting this from? Mishum Levi, the Hamak Kera. It says, "Vayaseb kol ish Yisrael el ha'ir." All the Jewish people came to the city. Ki ish echad chaverim. All of them, like one man, friends. But haverim also means haver, a religious Jew. So here it said they all came up and they all considered haverim. Hakatuv asaan kulan haverim. The pasuk made them all as if they are chaverim. They're all friends. Oh, haverim, and therefore they could be believed. Okay, so now the Gemara has a question. Mishnah, next Mishnah. הפותח את חביתו והמתחיל בעיסתו על גב הרגל. רבי יהודה אומר יגמור, חכמים אומרים לא יגמור. Here's the deal. The guy is selling dough. He's selling wine. He's in Jerusalem. Okay? And it's during the regal. And the Amaretz came by. Listen, during the regal, Amaretz considered tahor. He touched things. He's tahor. He continues selling it on the regal. After the holiday now, what happens to that dough and wine? The guy wants to sell it. Can he continue to sell it? So Yehuda says, yeah. Chamim say lo yigmor. He cannot continue to sell it. So now, yetiv Rav Ami, Rabbi Yitzchak nafcha, akil'a, the Rabbi Yitzchak nafcha. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak nafcha were once sitting in the courtyard of Rabbi Yitzchak nafcha, and they opened the discussion. Patach had v'amar ma shinichena laregel acher. Okay, you're telling me, according to Chamim, I cannot sell it after the holiday. Can I shelve it and then wait till the next holiday to sell it again? Because then they become tahor again, the Amaretz. So I'm going to said to the other, the call. Everyone's hand touched it. And you're saying leave it for the next holiday? Everyone already touched it. During the holiday, nobody touched it. He says, listen, during the holiday, you're right. They did touch it, but the Torah says, and the say they're tar during the holiday. So they're tar, but afterwards they're tameh. You cannot come and say again, now it's tahor again, became tameh afterwards. Let's not say it's an Amorite. It's not. It's a machoket Amoraim. Let's say it's a machoket of Tanaik. It's a machoket Tanaim. The Taneh Hada, we have a writer that says, you leave it for the next holiday. Seemingly, you leave it for the next holiday. So it does become Torah again. The Taneh Idach, no, you cannot leave it over. My love, Tanaim. They think the Mahoket Tanaim. So no, you don't have to read it that way. La. The one who says you can leave it over, that's the Rabbi Yehuda. You can leave it over. You can continue to sell it. The one who says you cannot leave it over is the Rabbanan. So you cannot leave it over. Where it says with Tisbra, does that make any sense? Part of Yehuda, Yigmor Ka'amar. He said Yigmor. You can finish it up. The one who says don't leave it over to the next holiday, that's Rabbi Yehuda. The one who says you could leave it over, that's the Rabbanan. You could leave it to the next holiday. But what does he mean when Yehuda he says don't leave it over? Don't leave it over for the next holiday. You don't have to leave it over. So it turns out the Gemara ends up saying seemingly that you could leave it over to the next holiday. That's the way you can learn the Braita according to the Rabbanan. However, the Rambam is not convinced. He's not convinced that the Gemara did a good tiyufta, a good refutation, and therefore the Rambam says the halacha as follows. He says, if one opened his barrel to sell wine or began selling his dough on a Yom Tov, on a Chag, the remainder of the barrel or dough is considered tameh after the Chag. It is assumed to have been touched on the festival by Amei Haaretz, who are pure only during the festival itself. And the halachas, like the Chachamim, likewise, the remainder of wine or dough may not be left for the following festival. You cannot leave it over. Although the conclusion of the Gemara seems to indicate otherwise, Rambam didn't see it as a substantial reputation, and therefore you cannot leave it over for the next holiday. So the halacha of the Rambam, again, many of these sugyot we see, it's not so pashut. The halacha of the Rambam is a little bit different from the way the Gemara seems to come out. Okay, that's why you have to have these Rishonim who understood, who have a Misorah, in order to find out what the actual halacha is. Okay, one last Mishnah we'll tell you for today, with one little piece of Gemara. Mishavar haregel ma'avirin al taharat ahazara. After the regel, we have to purify the courtyard, the temple courtyard. Why? The Amaretz Kohanim were there. They touch things. And during the holiday, they're considered tahor. But after the holiday, it becomes tameh. And now we have to, what's it called? We have to mitaher everything. Look at the Rambam. On the night of the conclusion of the pilgrimage festival, they would immerse all the temple vessels, since they were touched by Amaretz Kohanim during the Chag. They would therefore warn an Amaretz priest not to touch the table, the shulchan, so that it should not require immersion, followed by the setting of the sun, as this would lead to suspension of the mitzvah that the lechem upon him should be tamid in front always. So therefore, even the Kohen that was Amaretz, you're quarantined the shulchan, but everything else he touched, and everything else would have to go to the mikvah, become tahor after the holiday. Avad haregel yom hashishi. If the regel ended on Friday, lo hayu ma'avim. They did not put everything in the mikvah. They would not purify everything. Why? Well, the Shabbat. Because they gave time to prepare for Shabbat. You have to do Shabbos preparations. Therefore, they extended the purification of Amaretz to include Friday on Shabbat until they can get it on Saturday night. Even if the holiday ended on Thursday, right? Wednesday night, Thursday. Shena Kohanim Pinuim, because the Kohanim were not free. What do you mean they're not free? Tana was taught in a Braita. What does it mean they were not free, and therefore Thursday is also an extension? Shena Kohanim Pinuim Melahotzi Badeshen. During the holiday, a large quantity of ash would be collected on the Mizbeach. They would not be removed on the holiday. They would have to be removed afterwards. So therefore, all the priests were kept busy with this task on Thursday, which did not leave them with enough time to deal with the cleansing. It will not leave them enough time to deal with the cleansing. And therefore, even from Thursday, there would be the extension. Okay? All right. This is where we're going to get up to in the Gemara, B'ezrat Hashem, next week. We should be able to finish up the Masechta. Okay? Yasher koach lekulam. Shavu tov. Stay safe, stay warm. Hatzlacha.